Good morning. I'm Father Pat Travers, a member of the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and I'm here to talk to you today about the Tijuana Mission Outreach. First of all, I want to thank the Mission Office of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles for allowing me to come here today, and also to your pastor for allowing me in. But I'm grateful to be here. A little bit about myself. I spent 49 years at Damien High School, an all-boys Catholic high school in Laverne. And it was there that we started the Tijuana Mission Outreach. We started at the request of a Father Bob Callahan, an oblate priest who was given the undaunting task of starting a parish in La Morita outside of Tijuana. I say a tremendous challenge for him, because there's basically over 300,000 people. Some of them were native, some of them were from further south in Mexico, and many others were from Guatemala and El Salvador, all looking for jobs at the border. I said in the beginning we did grunt jobs, basically building retaining walls, fences, trenches for telephone wires. And on one of those days when we broke for lunch, the students, as always, went on the roof of the van, and I sat on the ground by the rear wheel. As I was sitting there, a few seconds later, a local kid, 8 or 9 years of age, came and sat beside me. There was no conversation. There was no need for conversation. I reached into my bag and I took out the other sandwich that I had and gave it to him. He scarfed it down in seconds. And then he pointed to the bottle of water that I had, the only one I had. I handed it to him, and equally fast he demolished that. I went later that day and we talked with Father Callahan and some of the other people in the parish, and they told us that there were segments of the population that only had one meal a day. And so from there, the students and myself decided we would do food runs on days off of school. We'd go down 4 or 5 times a year and bring down a van load of rice, beans, flour, sugar, bread, and other miscellaneous items, and would distribute them to either 25 families or 50 families. When there was 50 families, we would bring down 2 van loads of goods. One of the major things that we're proud of is we have built, is building, and we have built over 100 homes, 10 churches, and 8 sets of classrooms. And also we've gone back and put extension onto 2 of the earlier churches we had built. The houses are built to American standards, 700 square feet, peaked roof, insulated, wired, 4 rooms, and a common room and a bathroom. Normally every summer we did the building, but because of the pandemic, it got scattered this year, and we ended up basically building all year, beginning about October of last year. We used the locals who had worked with us over the years to do the building, and they built 5 homes, and they built the church, and the volunteers that came down from the US built the classrooms. The other thing that we accomplished was I'm talking about grunt jobs. We helped Father Callahan build a rectory for the priests, as well as meeting rooms, and we also helped them build a clinic. And the clinic certainly is the pride of the community, a 3-story clinic. After my 49 years at Damien, I was assigned to Holy Innocents Parish in Victorville. When I went there, I didn't have the freedom to be able to go down as often as I would like to, but we continued to do the food runs in a different form. We would take the same items, the rice, beans, flour, and bread, and we'd take them to a clinic for an AIDS clinic for adults, and bring them to Olga. Olga was the lady who cooked breakfast for about 30, 40 kids before school. And then we took other bags of flour and rice to a convent in El Nino, and as well as at Immaculata Church, and they were distributed there to the locals who needed it. In the process of dealing with Tijuana, we brought in used clothes for years, and even after used clothes were not permitted, we continued to smuggle them in. But then finally the customs people got too wise to me and said no more. And so I was stranded with basically a shed full of used clothes. And a friend that I hadn't talked to for about 30 years called me to talk about Tijuana. And we talked. And finally I told him that I couldn't get clothes in. And he said nobody else can either. And he said, have you ever heard of Mecca? Now, when he said Mecca, he meant Galilee Center. No, I hadn't heard of Galilee Center, but I investigated it, and they were more than happy to take the used clothes. As I say, God works in mysterious ways, and that was one of them. But bringing the used clothes wasn't all that we did for Mecca. Mecca is situated in the agricultural area of Coachella Valley, and most of the workers are migrant workers. They don't get much of a salary, and they don't have much of a place to live in, much of a home to live in. We began to bring down other items to Mecca, such as grain, bread, blankets, soccer balls, jackets, all of that. And I referred to Mecca as Tijuana, USA. I mentioned a while ago that we built churches. And you probably ask, why so many churches? Because the people walk everywhere, and we brought the church to them. It was a place for them to have mass, a place for them to do weddings, a place for them to have funerals, a place for them to do quinceanera and other such events. And above all, it was, in a way, a meeting place, a local meeting place for them. But another part of this is myself. In my young years in Ireland, in high school years, I had wanted to be a priest, yes, but I also wanted to go on the missions to Africa. That was my primary desire. But when I joined the Sacred Hearts Fathers and was given my assignment in 1962, in those days you took your assignment and went. And the assignment that I was given was Damien High School. Reflecting on the whole experience, I feel that I have, in a backhanded way, that lived out my experience as a missionary. Maybe that was God's way of letting me do both, be at Damien High School and at the same time live out a missionary experience. Because if I had gone to Africa, what would I have done? Probably the same thing, building churches and houses and all such events, and getting probably food and items, clothes provided. And that, in a sense, would have been no different. So I suspect that God, in His own way, allowed me to do that. So I'm here today asking you for your support for the Tijuana Mission Outreach. Our budget for this year, 22-23, is $150,000. And what we get from the parishes that where I'm allowed to speak would go a long ways on that. And so I appeal to you today to be generous in your response. In your pews, there are envelopes that have been provided by the mission office. I'd ask you to use those envelopes in in giving your funds, giving your support. And I'd ask you to, if you're writing a check, make it out to the Propagation of the Faith. Now, if you want to help and you can't help today, take an envelope home with you and return it next week and put it into collection. Again, I thank you for your time, and I want to assure you that you will be constantly in our prayers. I'm very grateful to your support. Outside, we have, you may have seen it on the way in, we have a model of the houses that we built. We also have brochures for those who would like to get one. So again, I thank you and God bless.